Hey, what's up? This is Jose. I'm in Miami. I am home. I'm on my balcony. And before I jump into the video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like the video, comment on it as well. And I do have a price to charge here, okay? There's one charge, and that is this. If you get any value from this video at all, go ahead and share it with someone who would resonate and benefit from that as well, okay? Tell them to subscribe to my channel too. Now, without further ado, let's just crack right into this. What I wanted to talk about this time was how to find your passion. And this question came up in, I was hosting a Clubhouse room with a couple of really good friends of mine, and we were hosting a Clubhouse room about energy, leadership, and entrepreneurship. And so someone asked a question about how to find your passion, how to know what is your purpose here on the planet, how to find something that really energetically excites you in a way that where you don't feel like you're working anymore. And this is an amazing question, and I think this is extremely true, especially this is especially important for you to find out if you want to live a life that you are completely free. Again, you know, like my mentoring program is called Freedom Mentoring, and so this is something that I talk about all the time, really helping people find their passion in life and really be excited to work every single day, be excited to do business every single day and interact with the world. And so the reason that this is such an important question is because there's a lot of different nuances that go into finding your passion and finding what your purpose is here on this planet. And I think realistically, you know, a couple things that really do come to mind for me is that this should be a question that you continually ask yourself, right? You should almost use this as like this question as a barometer for how you are actually doing in terms of your purpose, right? Like if you're always asking yourself about, okay, so like what's my purpose here? Why am I on this planet? What are the main reasons that I came here for? What is my journey here meant to be in relation to others, in relation to like how I interact with the world? I think that really gives you a good measure for how you're actually doing in the present moment, okay? So that's one of the things that I use as sort of like a strategy for me to question where I'm at in that moment. Not necessarily question my purpose per se, but really question what my progress is, where my sticking points are, and how I can really work around those things to be a more productive, a more successful person in my purpose. And I'll speak specifically to some of what I think my purpose is here, what I know to be my purpose on this planet, what really makes me passionate, what really drives me in a direction where I'm always in an energetic state. And because, you know, a lot of the feedback I receive from people is that I'm a super rich person energetically, right? Every time that people are around me, they feel good, they feel excited, they feel motivated. And it's such a refreshing thing to hear as feedback, because that's really how I live my life. That's really kind of how I picture myself each and every day. And so what I'll do is I'll sort of work into this message about how to really find this in your life, and what are the things that I learned in my journey, and how you can sort of, you know, get the quick answer and not have to spend, you know, 5, 10, 20, 30 years to figure this out on your own. And so I've always been a big believer in mentors, and I spent a lot of time with some of the best mentors you can find on the planet. I've had a handful of mentors that are literally some of the best motivational speakers in the world, and they have amazing followings. They're incredibly successful. Obviously they're very wealthy as a result of that, but they're some of the most in tune with their purpose people, if you will. They're some of the most in tune people that I've ever met in my life. They're awake, their eyes are vibrant, their life is vibrant, they have a lot of energy because they're so passionate about what they do. And these were the things that they taught me, right? Like I didn't figure out these things all on my own, right? Like I'm a huge believer in mentorship. I'm a huge believer in getting around the right people who are going to help you get to wherever you want to be in your life a lot quicker, right? One of the biggest things that some of my, this is sort of like a side tangent, but one of the biggest things my mentors told me was you can either figure this stuff out on your own, or you can just go spend time with someone like a mentor, pay whatever fee they charge, and go get the answer a lot quicker, okay? And when you get the answer a lot quicker, you just progress that much faster in life. And so, you know, again, I'm even doing business deals with people who are looking at me like, you know, doing business deals with literally 60 and 70-year-old men who are looking at me and my partners to coach their teams, to really bring a lot of value to their organizations. And it's really a surreal thing, because they're giving us feedback of things of like, yeah, you guys have balls, man. You guys are bold. Like, you guys are doing things that most people your age aren't doing. And that's exactly how I see myself as a person. That's exactly the kind of passion that I envisioned myself living with 5 years ago. Right, 5 years ago when I was 21 years old, this is exactly the kind of passion that I wanted to have in my life, that I intentionally desired to cultivate in my life. And so, you know, fast forward 5 years, you know, I didn't do that shit on my own. Like I think the biggest thing that holds people back is just like finding a level of humbleness and even humility to admit to themselves, like, yeah, I don't have all the answers. You know, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And the quicker you're able to do that, the quicker you're able to admit to yourself, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. The faster you're able to admit to yourself that there is a problem, the quicker the solution comes along, okay? And so if you're a person who feels like you can't find your passion, or like this was the thing for me. I felt like there's nothing that really stuck out to me in a really big way that I can really identify as my passion. And I was using things like, let's say, I've always been an athletic person. I've always been into sports. And I love pro athletics, right? I mostly like NFL. I like watching a lot of football. And so when you watch like a football player, a star football player, like let's say, I don't know, one of my favorite players is Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson, like his purpose is to play football, right? And these players, they obviously got into this when they were very young. And so like from a young age, they already understood that their purpose was, okay, I'm going to go play this sport at the highest level. Okay. But then you also can look at, let's say I have a lot of friends from college and university. I have friends that are in like med school. I have friends that are just finishing up a graduate school for either business or law or anything like that. And so their purpose is, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be the CEO of a company, something like that, right? A lot of my friends already have like a defined purpose in that way. For me, it was a little bit different because of like my personality and because of kind of like the things I gravitate towards. I was genuinely interested in all those types of things, right? I love science, I love business, I love communication, I love sales. I really do like knowledge and philosophy and things like that, right? So the things that I was interested was just such a broad, it was just in so many categories, so many different categories, that it was really hard for me to pinpoint exactly what I wanted to execute on for the rest of my life. And so that was one of the issues that I found myself in, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with this, because especially if you, like, let's say you didn't go to college, or you don't have like something like a sport or a craft like music or something that you latched onto really quickly and decided that this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to find your passion and to find your purpose. So if you're my age, really at any point in your life, and you're really trying to figure out what your passion is, chances are it's because a lot of times you just have so many different interests or skill sets in a broad amount of areas that it's really hard for you to pinpoint exactly what's going to be what's going to give you the best long-term optimal outcome. Okay, and so we're sort of thinking about this in a very logical context. And the first piece of advice that I got from my mentors was number one, tune into when you were a kid. Okay, and I've done videos on this before where kids are the most confident people that you will ever meet. Kids are the most confident people that you will ever meet. And the reason they're so confident is because they haven't been bogged down by society standards and the feedback and the limitations that everyone in their surroundings imposes on them, right? So like, it's pretty common knowledge that the first 7 to 8 years of a kid's life is when, as a parent, you should be instilling in them a deep sense of confidence. Now, the problem is, especially in like a Western country, a westernized country like the United States, only 4% of families are functional. And you can Google this, 96% of families are dysfunctional. Okay, so what that means is the majority of people that you meet on some level have a level of dysfunction, and it's attributed to the way they were brought up. Okay, and so most people aren't confident in themselves. They have low self-esteem. Why? And it's because somewhere along the lines, in the first years of their life and the most formidable years of your life, you were trained and you were conditioned out of your confidence, right? Look at a kid, right? Let's say a 4-year-old at a grocery store who wants a candy bar. He's not going to take no for an answer. I know I was that way, right? Like if I went to, I come from a poor family, but if my mother ever told me no, like if I asked her for a candy bar, let's say we were in line at the grocery store, and I'm 4 years old, I'm all curious and stuff, and I see a candy bar, I'm like, ooh, I want that. It tastes good, right? And I hand it to my mom and say, hey mom, can I get this? And she'd go, no, we can't afford it right now. And I'd be like, but I want it. Right? And then she'd be like, no. And I'd be like, no, I want it, right? And so there'd be a back and forth until eventually my mom was just like, fine, just get it, right? But enough. So a kid is born with confidence. A kid is born knowing what he wants to do, right? If you were a kid, if you can tune into the emotion and the feeling of what you had when you were a kid, when you were 7 years old, you were like really ambitious about life. You were curious about things. You were always seeking knowledge. You were like asking a lot of questions. And so along the lines, you lost that sense of curiosity and passion for life because you were indoctrinated into society, right? Now, I'm not saying this as like a doom and gloom thing, right? Like, oh fuck, like life sucks and all that shit. No, it's just kind of happens by osmosis, right? Like only 4% of families actually get this right from the get-go. I've only met like 1 or 2 people on it. Like honestly, I've only met a handful of people in my life that actually have zero trauma. Like it's honestly kind of weird. Like they're just like, I'd be having conversations with these people and it's like, okay, so like what's your deal? Like what's your issue? Do you have depression? Do you have anxiety? Are you like a workaholic? What's your thing? And they're just like, no, I just enjoy life. I just enjoy life. And it's very rare to find. If you ever meet people like that, just learn from them because there's a lot of wisdom to who they are. And I've only met a handful of people like this in my life. And And so, and the reason I circle back to this, because this is probably a reason why you lost your passion for life in the first place, okay? A little bit of more science behind this. Kids, their brains are emitting theta waves. And if you know anything about the brain waves, there's 4 different waves, right? So there's delta, that's when you're deep in sleep, right? So when you're in a deep state of sleep, you're in delta. Theta is when you're in a trance-like state, when you're transitioning to delta, okay? So you're accessing your subconscious mind, you're in a trance-like state, you're almost like not even in control of your body, of your conscious mind, and you're able to, that's why kids learn so quickly, is because when you're in a state of theta, you learn a lot quicker because you're implanting messages and information directly to your subconscious mind, okay? Now, the next level up is alpha waves, right? And alpha waves is when like you're in a meditative state, when you're in a state of mindfulness, or when you're in a flow state. Like right now I'm in alpha because I'm in a flow state. Most of the time whenever I do videos like this, the first couple minutes of the video, I'm in a state of beta, right? And a beta state is when you're completely in your conscious mind, you're sort of just like getting the job done, you're having to focus on what the task is at hand. But when you get into a flow state, you transition into alpha, okay? And so the brain waves are sort of like a measure of how suggestible you are and how much mindfulness you have in that moment, right? So it's like it goes from beta, and when you're transitioning to alpha, you go to alpha. When you're transitioning to theta, you go theta, and then you go all the way down to delta is when you're in a deep state of sleep, okay? So you're completely unconscious, okay? And that's when you have dreams, by the way. Now, kids are in a state of theta until about 7, 8, 9, 10 years old sometimes, right? So in the first few years of your life is when your parents should really be instilling a sense of curiosity and enthusiasm and passion in your life. Now, most of us lost that. Okay, so what's the solution now? Well, first, number one, tune back into that emotion of what you wanted to be when you were a kid. For me, when I was a kid, and this is, everyone cracks up whenever I tell them this, is I wanted to be a Pokemon trainer. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I like Pokemon. I still play it to this day. And I'm a huge nerd when it comes to those types of things, right? And so when I was little, that's what I wanted to be. Like I would literally go to the park. You know, I played football, I played sports and all that stuff. So that was like my next thing. I wanted to be in the NFL. But my number one thing is I wanted to be a Pokemon trainer. I would literally go to the park with like Pokeballs strapped around my waist belt, and I'd pretend I was like Ash Ketchum from the TV shows, right? And so that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. Like if you asked me at 6 years old what I wanted to be, it was that. Now, obviously that's not a real thing. Like that's not, I mean, I guess you can play that game competitively and you can win a lot of money and live your life like that. That's really not my goal. More so for me, what the passion was, especially when it came to something like that, was the adventure of it all, right? It was being in a state of creativeness and imaginativeness and really being in tune with that part of me that was in a creative headspace all the time and feeling like I'm free to do whatever I want and express myself in any possible way. And so that's really how I found my passion, okay? A couple years ago, I really decided that I was not going to do the 9-to-5 rat race thing. I was not going to go get a corporate job. And you know, I did a couple of corporate jobs here and there. I think I mentioned this in my last video. I did like an HR job. I worked at Chipotle. I did door-to-door sales for 3 years. And some of those jobs were great, especially like the door-to-door sales job. It really taught me a lot about confidence. It taught me a lot about myself, how much pain I'm willing to tolerate, how much rejection I am actually capable of withstanding, and it made me into a much more confident person and way more self-reliant, right? If you can do door-to-door sales successfully for an extended period of time, you can be successful at anything. And so it really helped me find a passion for discipline, find a passion to do difficult things, and not shy away from challenging myself, okay? Because that was my personality type. Because I had been indoctrinated to like a soft mentality, I wouldn't stick things through. I wouldn't see things through. I would quit, okay? And I quit a few very key things in my life, and when I was like 22, 23 years old, I decided I'm done with that. I'm no longer going to be that person. And I decided to live a life with passion. And so the way I arrived at this point was I began to ask myself questions like this. Okay, like when I was younger, what were the things that really excited me? Well, it was things like curiosity. It was things like adventures. It was things like asking tough questions, reading books, finding out knowledge, finding out about myself, communicating with people, right? I've always been I'm an introverted person by heart, by nature, but I've always really enjoyed having a high level of oxytocin in my brain. And oxytocin is the neurotransmitters, the neurochemicals in your brain that are present whenever you have connection with people. Okay, so let's say if you're cuddling with someone, you're touching someone, you're actually connecting with people, you have high levels of oxytocin in your brain because your brain is stimulating that. It's like a feel-good hormone, okay? Now, those are things that really excite me and make me passionate, okay? And how did I transition that to like having my own mentoring company? Well, look, I do three things. Well, the first thing is I have my own mentoring company, so I run my own organization. The second thing is I day trade and invest on the stock market. Okay, so I learned how to day trade. I learned how to trade options, buying calls, buying puts, selling calls, combination trades, all that stuff. And I really sat down and I learned this at a high level. And then I'm also the VP for one of my friend's companies, and I'm building out his sales team. Okay, so it's like, how did I get to a point where I just kind of do whatever I want and I'm a leader in everything I do? Well, it's like I started to ask myself questions like, if this is like the second part to the second key piece of advice that I would give you. Number one would be tune into the energy of you as a kid. Number two is, if I was already at that point in my life, if I was already living with passion, what would I be doing right now? Okay, so if 10 years from now, right, let's just give you like a long-term example. If 10 years from now I was living my best life, I was living exactly the way I wanted it to with nothing holding me back, what would that look like? Okay, and I started to ask myself that question a lot when I was working at my last company. So just a little bit more context, the last job I'll ever have in my life, again, I will never have another job, but that job, I was one of the top sales guys at that company, and we were selling personal development programs, and we were coaching people on how to be the best version of themselves. And this was a question that I was asking people all the time. And when I first started out at this job, which was like the onset of my major depression and my major anxiety, my NPD, when I started to deal with those things, I was asking these questions to people all the time about, where do you want to be in the future? What would your life look like if everything was perfect the way you wanted it to be? What can you accomplish if nothing was holding you back? And I realized, one of the biggest things that contributed to my depression and anxiety was I was asking all these questions, but I didn't even know them for myself, right? I didn't even have an answer for these questions for myself. And so when I went back to the drawing board, amidst all the emotions and darkness that was coming up in my life, I really got to the core of like the main things that I needed to do in order for me to live a free life for me, whatever that means for me. Everybody else has a different definition of freedom. For me, living a free life, living an adventurous lifestyle is one where I'm not being told what to do. I'm living completely on my own terms. I have financial abundance. I can go experience whatever I want at the drop of a hat. I don't have to ask anybody for permission to do anything I want, and I get to pass it on to other people. Before I get into that third thing, I really want to hone in on this and how important it is to really start to future pace. This is called future pacing, and do it to yourself. This is like an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming technique called pacing and leading. Well, do the pacing and leading for yourself, right? Literally ask yourself and sit down. It might take you a few years to figure this out. You might know the answers right now this second as soon as you ask yourself. But if everything was in your life was exactly the way you wanted it to be, what would you be doing, right? Ask yourself questions like, who would you be spending your time with? What would you be doing? If you were traveling, where would you be traveling? How would you be making money? What kind of people would be a good partner for that life? How would your romantic life look like? How much would you be able to contribute to your family? How would it feel to be that person, right? And when you really tune into that feeling, right, and this is why I was saying tune into the emotions you had as a kid. If you can tune into the feeling of how it's going to feel to live with passion, the answers just come a lot quicker, right? And then at that point, the vehicle of how you can get to that point in your life where you are living completely free with nothing holding you back really starts to show up. So whether that's like music or like a sport or something like this, let's say you want to be a fucking life coach. Well, it's going to require you to get out of your comfort zone and put yourself in a position where people are going to hear your message. You got to speak up. Okay, and really realistically, if you want to be successful at anything, it does require you to speak up, right? If you want to be successful in music, if you want to be successful, maybe being an athlete is probably the one thing you don't really need to speak up. It's more of like a physical thing you need to do. It's more of a physical thing you need to show up as the best version of yourself. But if you don't open your mouth and go express these things to people, you're not going to be able to find the right coaches and the right trainers to get yourself in a peak physical state to be the best at that sport and make it to that pro level. Now, this brings me to my third point, which is this, and this is specific to like people that are really into self-help or people that are like, this is something that I hear all the time. I hear it like in the self-help community. It's like, oh, I just want to help people. I just want to help people, right? And cool. That's great. Like that's pretty cool. Like that's cool. You want to help people. I think that's an awesome goal. But the reality of it is that the people that are saying this a lot of times are the people that can't even help themselves, right? Like, again, this is the space that I'm in, and so I have conversations all the time with people that either want to be life coaches or they have like depression and anxiety or things that are holding them back from just living like a purely authentic life, literally living abundantly, right? And one of the things that I hear all the time is that like, I want to help people. Now, I've heard it so much, I'm a little bit sick of it. I'm a little bit tired of it. And a lot of times one of the biggest things that people who are saying that need to realize is you have to help yourself first before you can help someone else. Okay, and a lot of people are like, oh no, that's not true, and like, oh, that's messed up, like you're being selfish. But like, no, like go read a book like go read this book. Go read The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand, and you'll really get a better conception of what the word selfish means. When people think about selfish, they think about it in a win-lose situation, like a zero-sum game where there's one winner and one loser. But the reality is, real selfishness, a productive, beneficial, mutually beneficial type of selfishness is good for everybody, right? Because if I'm able to help myself and take care of myself and take responsibility for my life, how much easier is it for me to help you with your life? That I'll have not only the financial resources, but the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual resources to really help you find your way. And I think this notion of I just want to help people, it was made popular by like guys like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and blah blah blah. The list goes on of like all these famous influencers and stuff. And I think it's outdated. I think what the new thing is going to be going forward is I don't care about helping people. I care about getting people to help themselves. Right? What I care about is helping people to help themselves. And this is in line with the old biblical metaphor of you give a man a fish, he has food for one night. But you teach a man to fish, he has food for the rest of his life. And especially nowadays, people are so hung up on like getting something for nothing. People literally feel like they're entitled to things and they're entitled to wealth and all the great things and all the privileges of life, except they haven't actually done anything for it. Right? And it's a slippery slope when you begin to think those things, right? And it really robs you of your passion, okay? It robs you of your passion when you think in terms like that. Because if you really think in terms of like, oh, I just want to help people, but you actually haven't found what are the core things in your life that are going to give you a deep sense of passion, I promise you, I guarantee you, you're not going to help anybody. You're really not going to. You might, let me rephrase that, you might help a few people, but the scope and the scale of people you can help once you've already accomplished a deep sense of confidence and certainty in yourself, it's going to be way bigger than if you were to just like say, oh, I just want to help people right now. And hopefully this all makes sense, and I'm really not trying to be a dick here, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I'm really trying to highlight the fact that like, it's almost like you're really holding yourself back when you say like, oh, I just want to help people, like I don't care how much money I make, I don't care about, no, like you need to care about how much money you make, you need to care about your status and your position in life, you need to care about the resources that you have, you need to care about your body, you need to care about your spirituality, because when you have those things in line, it's so much easier to help other people. And the way this connects to finding your passion is when you're in a state of alignment, and this is really like the main concept I want to get off with my third piece of advice here, and this will be the final piece, is get into like a deep sense of spiritual, emotional, psychological alignment with who you are as a person, okay? And I was talking, I'm in a really popular Facebook group, and I opened up a discussion about this, and people were like, there was a handful of people that got what I was trying to say here, but the majority of people were like very much put off by what I was saying, and it was this, that once you get into a deep sense of spiritual alignment, your issues just go away. The challenges, the quote-unquote issues and challenges that you have in your life, they just disappear, right? And people didn't understand that, but this is what I mean by that. And of course, it is hard to kind of convey a nuanced, intricate idea over Facebook, over typing, but it's a lot easier to explain in person, because what happens is when you have a deep sense of spiritual alignment, you know who you are. When you know who you are, success is a lot easier to attract into your life, okay? When you know your truth, you know who you are, you know what your purpose here on this planet is, it's so much easier to live with passion, right? Like think about it just in a logical context. If you knew what the end outcome in mind was for your life, would it not be easier to take action on the in-between? Right? Like let's say you wanted to make $1 million, right? In a business context, what does that mean? Okay, so it's like, I want to make $1 million. Well, how much money is that per month? That's about $80,000 per month, okay? So I need to make about $80,000 per month in order for me to make $1 million given a 1-year time frame, okay? So now it's like, okay, now I can ask myself at that point, I need to make $80,000 per month. What skill sets and assets do I have that I can either, sell to someone, or a service that I can provide, or a product that I can provide, where I can charge $80,000 worth of product and services and get to that $1 million mark consistently over a year's worth of time. Okay, so now that you have a more logical mindset about this, now it's easier to execute on, and you're gonna have a lot more passion, because you're kind of like, you sort of take out all the overthinking and all the guesswork that comes from starting and achieving a goal, okay? And so and this is why it's so important to be in spiritual alignment with who you are as a person, because when you have energetic alignment, a lot of the overthinking and a lot of the doubts and the self-defeating behaviors and the worries you have in life just really dissipate, right? You develop a deep sense of self-trust. And I think that's really the key to my third piece of advice here, is develop a deep sense of self-trust. Even if you're broke, even if you feel like you're not smart enough, even if you feel like you don't have the right partnerships or the right network in order for you to be successful, continue to develop a deeper sense of self-trust. Because here's the reality. Wealth isn't about money. Money is a measure of wealth, and it's a really good measure of wealth, but wealth is not about money. Wealth is wisdom. It's what you have in your brain. It's what you have in your character that was more likely than not, more often than not, going to produce a high income for you, okay? So what this means is a wealthy person isn't necessarily one that has a lot of money. It's someone who has a rich character, someone who's very confident in who they are as a person, someone who's able to use their clarity of mind and mindfulness to find solutions in a much more effective and pragmatic way than someone who isn't wealthy. Wealth is all about like what's going on in your mind, right? And coming from someone like me, where I was the type of person when I had major depression and anxiety, there was a war zone going on in my mind. I was spiritually and emotionally poor at that time. There was a war zone going on in my brain because I was overthinking things. I had a lot of doubts about myself. I felt like a deplorable person. I felt like I had very little worth in my life. And again, it's like the same person who has a high sense of self-worth a lot of times tends to have a high income as well. But the two, they're not mutually exclusive, okay? Like you can still be broke right now and have a high sense of self-worth, right? Like it isn't like those two things they're not mutually exclusive where like you have to have both at the same time. No. What happens if you're too outcome dependent, you'll never be wealthy. So what you want to do is you want to affirm to yourself and develop and cultivate a deep sense of spirit, not necessarily spirituality, but centering in who you are as a person right now, and be in alignment with your energy right now and who you are and your deeper sense of confidence and self-trust. Self-trust is the big thing here, because once you have that self-trust, it's way easier to execute on a business or a passion of yours, and it's way easier to live with congruence in your life. That's what really attracts people, and that's what's ultimately going to attract a lot of business into your life and ultimately put you in a position where you live free. Because when you have that spiritual alignment, you know what you want in your life, and so you'll continue to take action in alignment with that, and you'll also know what you don't want in your life, and so you'll be able to take a step back and allow those things to just kind of go away, okay? And when you have that deep sense of congruence in your life, it just makes everything a lot easier. It makes personal relationships easier, business relationships easier. It makes the voice in your head a lot nicer to you, right? Like you'll be thinking a lot nicer thoughts. You'll have genuine gratitude for who you are and your circumstance in that moment. And even if you are in like a tough financial situation, or you're going through like a bad breakup, or you're having a fight with your family, or you feel like you're not, spiritually confident in that moment, if you have that deep sense of self-trust, you have enough mental power and spirituality and really just confidence in yourself as a person to find some solutions eventually, right? One of the biggest things that my mentors also told me is this too shall pass, right? Whatever you're going through right now, if it's a negative thing, it will pass, right? As long as you continue to have a deep state of mindfulness and you know what you want out of your life and you continue to take action in that direction, you will be successful, right? You will have a high income. You will have the ability to do whatever you want with your life. But it all starts from tuning into the feeling you had as a kid, developing that deeper sense of spirituality, and putting yourself in a position where you can take advantage of all the resources you have in your life and really get yourself to a place in life where you are free. Because ultimately, and this is something that's really true for me, and I think it's true for most people. Everybody has a different context or a different interpretation of this, rather. I think everybody is striving for the same thing. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to have sovereignty in their life, right? And this has nothing to do with whether like you're working for someone or you're running your own business or for that matter, right? But I think deep down inside, the only reason people feel any sort of like negativity or depression or anxiety is because they ultimately don't feel like they're in control of their life, or at least they have security in their life. This is a whole nother topic, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's really hard for people to live in a self-actualized position in their life, to live with like mindfulness and gratitude and a deep sense of purpose in their life if you don't have your basic needs taken care of. I'll talk about that stuff in another day, but this is sort of like a little teaser for the next video to come, and I'll be sure to really hit home with those things and break this down into these very basic concepts. And hopefully this resonates. Hopefully this really makes sense about how you can find a deeper sense of passion in your life and how you can live with purpose, okay? And realistically, I think that's my purpose here. That is my purpose, not only to live this free life, but to also show the light to other people and to help them be able to do it on their own. Like I don't like fucking handouts. I don't even like handouts myself. When I quit my job back in June of 2020, okay? And I could have gotten unemployment. I could have gone to the government and asked for an unemployment check, but I refused to. I refused to take money that I did not actually earn. I don't care what my position is, right? I don't care what my position is. I refuse to take money that I didn't actually earn. And when you have this level of clarity and confidence in yourself, it's like you don't need the handout. You have so much self-trust that even though I didn't have income for a substantial period of time, I put myself in a position where I was able to figure out the solutions a lot quicker, and it really didn't feel that bad, honestly. Like obviously there was like a level, like I had to figure out some solutions and become more resourceful than ever before, but when you just have this much abundance, it really just isn't an issue. Like I don't worry about, like I hope you can hear the clarity in my voice when I say it's like I don't worry about my finances at all. Like whether, like at times where I had a lot of money and times where I've been broke, I don't worry about money anymore, right? Because I just have so much trust in myself and the universe and the resources that I have in my life that, you know, I know that I'll figure something out in either case. In both cases, I still feel a tremendous sense of gratitude for my life and just being here on the planet. So hopefully that all makes sense and hopefully this resonates. If this is something that you really like and you resonate with in a big way, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, drop a comment, like the video, share it with someone you love. Go ahead and share this with people that you like. People that you also want them to grow, okay? I'm gonna be dropping more videos about this in the future. That's it for me now. Peace.